Okay. Jaime taught you how to do piecewise functions when your function has all lines. So you use 6 to 1 equation. But when your function has parabolas, you have to know how to find the equation for a parabola, which is a little bit different than a line. Oh, my name is Ruby. The first thing you do for solving for this piecewise function is you have to find the domain of the function. What you do is you find the values on where the lines go on your x-axis. So if you see this line starts at -7 and ends at -5, but your parabola begins at -5 and ends at 4. And your third line begins at 4 and ends at 8. So what you would do is find your first point that touches the graph and then your last point. So you would write -7, and since this has a solid dot, it would be included, so it would be a bracket. And then you find your last point on the graph, which is 8. And since this one has an open circle and it's not solid, you would put a parentheses. And this is your domain of your entire function. To find your piecewise function, the first thing you would do is find the equation for the first line. You solve this one the way Jaime showed, where you solve for m and then plug it into the equation. So it's the first point is at, use another sheet of paper so you'll be able to see it clear. Your first point is at -7.5. And your second point is at -3.7. So you would plug them into the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And you would put 7 minus 5 over -3 minus -7. 7 minus 5 to -3 minus -7. You would add them and you would get +4. Your slope would equal 1/2. I'm going to plug it into a different equation than Jaime did so you can see two different ways to do it. You would plug it in to the point slope formula, which is equal to point slope formula would be y equals m parentheses x minus x1 plus y1. So what you do for this one is you find your m and then you plug in one of your points. It's a lot easier than the one that Jaime did because you don't have to solve for anything except m and then just look for a point on the line. So I'm going to plug in -7.5 to my formula. My slope is 1/2 parentheses x. I'm going to use this one. Plus 7 minus 3. And this would be my first part of my piecewise function. So I'll go back and write it. Y equals 1/2 parentheses x plus 7 minus 3. I have to come back to find the intervals for where the equation lands. It starts at -7 and ends at -3. So I would do bracket. I'm gonna put it in a different notation. I'm gonna put it at -7, comma, and then where it ends, -3. And since it's a solid dot, I'm also going to put brackets. This is different notation than Jaime did in his equation. And then I'm going to solve for my parabola, which is a little bit trickier than doing an equation because you have to use a whole different formula. For this one, you would plug it in to you would plug it into the equation for a parabola for the vertex form, which would be you find a point on your parabola to solve for A, which would be the same as a slope. You use the vertex form and you find the vertex on the parabola to begin with. So your vertex on your parabola would be the highest point. The highest point on my parabola would be 1, positive 2. So if I plug that in to the equation, I would get -1a 4 minus 1 squared plus 2. -1, 2 was my vertex, but in the standard form it's negative, so that's why it's still negative. And then I just solve for A with basic algebra. I would get -1/3 for my A.